So there has actually been some controversy in Labour Party selections, and worth noting, as someone who does read Tribune, as someone who I've actually written an article for Tribune, but it is worth pointing out that all the various articles about this topic which are being written are from people who are opponents to the Labour Party. So take that into account as we look into this. So on the 18th of March, the Metropolitan Police's Cybercrimes Unit announced that it had launched an investigation into the Labour Party's selection process for the new seat of Croydon East. The contest had been suspended, followed allegations that members' details had been tampered with. Allegations since confirmed by party sources. Here we go. The investigation revealed that some personal details of members in Croydon East had been, quote, altered on the Labour Party membership database without authorisation, end quote, according to one source. This meant that some members may not have received all Labour communications. The presumption here being that this is communications saying about either how elections were working, in like selection stuff, elections like this, what often happens is that some kind of document or link is sent round which kind of explains what everyone's platform is. They said no sensitive personal data like members' financial details was affected, but another source said that emails, phone numbers and postal addresses were affected. The journalist Michael Crick, who used to work for Channel 4, I believe, and now runs a kind of Twitter account called Tomorrow's MPs, where he kind of writes about parliamentary selections for all political parties, which is actually a kind of interesting thing to report on. Like, the selections for candidates for the elections doesn't always get a huge amount of coverage, which certainly not if you think of the coverage that like primaries get in the US. The journalist Michael Crick posted, so many questions remain unanswered. Who carried out the alterations? Has anyone been punished? Does Labour even know who did it? The party has previously also said there's no issues with the Anony voter system, which was used for the selection vote. I guess that's like the platform website that was used for the vote. And the Labour Party won't be changing the platforms for selections. The scandal in Croydon, so this is with the problems occurring with the data being changed. The scandal in Croydon was followed by a jaw-dropping report in The Telegraph suggesting that Labour's parliamentary selections may have been systematically rigged using Anony Voter. Anony Voter is the online voting software used by local Labour Party branches to choose their candidates for the next election. So my understanding is that Anony Voter is used, and similar systems have been before, is used for like online vote, but you can also turn up and vote in a CLP meeting. So for anyone not in the UK or that's not aware of like internal Labour Party lingo, a CLP is a constituency Labour Party. So that's like a local party who, in this case, was selecting one candidate between them. The allegations extend beyond sitting MPs. There are growing concerns that Anony Voter may have been abused on an industrial scale to rig internal Labour contests. It would be astonishingly easy to do so. Poll administrators could theoretically add votes during the contests or vote on behalf of members without them knowing. Like, not all members vote in like selection, but like that's the kind of assertion that's being made here, I guess, is that turnout isn't perfect in these selection votes, and maybe if someone hadn't voted, it would be possible to do so. They can also see who has and hasn't voted. Meanwhile, the safeguards that should be in place aren't. While Anony Voter allows independent tellers to verify counts, Labour hasn't allowed them to do so for parliamentary selections. It should come as no surprise that there are growing demands for an independent KC-led investigation into Labour's selection process and the suspension of the use of the Anony Voter system in the interim. Supporters of an investigation into possible corruption include the affiliated trade unions. The Labour Party came out of the trade unions, and therefore a lot of unions are affiliated to it. Michael Crick, MPs Sam Tarry and Beth Winter, and the thousands who have signed Momentum's online petition. I think the rest of this article is more kind of suggesting that it should not be used anymore. It does show kind of one of the flaws in digital voting. And again, I'm not coming at this from having like a really strong feeling either way. I think the potential benefits in terms of accessibility that online voting or some form of like digital voting could provide is fantastic, right? I think if there is a way to do it, we should probably explore that in some way. Even if we can find a way to do it in a way that is foolproof, however, and we've kind of talked however much credence we actually kind of give this discussion, or whether we do think that it is actually much more difficult to hack or to influence or whatever. I think even the fact that it is easy to make those accusations makes it challenging. Even if voting machines were foolproof, which I'm not entirely convinced that they are, but even if they were, like, is the fact that it gives someone like Donald Trump an additional ability to go, oh, the company that had the voting machines stitched it all up, like that in itself is a problem. Yeah, so the reason that UCU elections or any other union elections, and particularly strike ballots in the UK, are on paper is because that's the law. So the Trade Union Act 2016 possibly basically clamped down on a bunch of like strike ballot stuff and required it to be the case that all voting had to be on paper. So either turning up and putting your voting paperwork in a box, which you still see at like at places where people work together. So a lot of the kind of like post office strikes, or sort of Royal Mail strikes, where mail workers have gone on strike. You know, you'll see big queues of people in the morning who are going in to vote to decide whether to go on strike or not. In even something like the UCU, where yes, people are all working at an institution, but there's, you know, a bit of flexibility with where people work, and people are often in different departments and stuff. Voting papers will be posted out, filled in, and sent back. Turnout also has to be above 50% in any strike ballot election. So during the last ballot for strike action by the UCU, which is the University and Colleges Union, there were some institutions, universities, whereby in the percentage of the people that voted, people voted to strike, but because turnout fell below 50%, it wasn't enough that some of those institutions could go on strike. So here, although 68% of people did vote, 31 said vote for strike action, 31 and a bit voted no, because it fell below the 50% turnout rate. Strike action wasn't able to happen. Often what happens though, I think this is like a national ballot. Often what happens is that different votes will be held at different institutions. So yeah, I mean, like I keep going back to this video of like the voting happening in front of people, and like it is a bit archaic. It feels slow and inefficient, and you know, the fact that you have to go to the place to vote is an obstacle which we should try and get rid of. But I think probably a day off to vote might be the better solution there. It is that sort of corruption factor of, if you have digital voting, 1 or 2 people, 10 people even, can shift the whole thing. With paper-based voting, that's just so much harder to happen. Like, you could maybe swing a local council seat, you could maybe swing a single MP seat with a huge amount of effort. It would be very hard to swing a whole general election. Hassle is a benefit, I guess. Although yeah, if we can find a way to break down some of those barriers, then, you know, I think we should. I'm definitely in favor of making it easier for people to vote.